Alright, what up guys? We are on the last build before the PTR, which is, this one was a hefty one because it's an overpowered Bone Spear build with the new pants, and there's been, as far as I looked online to try to reference something, because so maybe there was an old build of an overpower build with this, but nope, it doesn't exist, so we just had to make it from scratch with a lot of the new changes. But let's just get into it. Usually we start out with the skill tree, but maybe we'll go with the skill tree. We'll go with the skill tree. Granted, the type of gear we need might be too specific for the PTR. This is what I was looking for. But we'll just have to see. This doesn't matter. We have 3 into Unliving Energy and Perfectly Balanced and Hewed Flesh. To Bone Spear over to Supernatural Bone Spear, which is getting a change. It is adding 30% overpower damage. Corpse Explosion down to Fueled by Death. Titan's Fall. Since we are using Shroud of False Death, we'll still have 1 point into Necrotic Fortitude, so that you do get a barrier. It's just not going to be as much. But the pants make Bone Spear a blood skill, so it makes it kind of rough to find points. But anyway. We only have 1 into Bone Prison, even though this build uses Bone Prison. It's getting a cooldown reduction to 15 instead of 18. It's getting some ranks from the unique boots. I can't remember what they're called. It's getting, I don't know, we'll look at the changes. Over in the assigned skills page, when you scroll down to the how it works, I put all the changes that apply to this build. But anyway, we have 2 into Death's Embrace instead of 3 because enemies aren't typically going to be close. But it does give us some damage reduction, essentially, from, they deal less damage, but damage reduction from close enemies as well. Then we have Amplify. Then we have Decrepify, obviously, over to Abhorrent Decrepify. Then we have Coalescent Blood, which, since Bone Spear is a blood skill now, it doesn't really apply to us. But this is actually getting rid of the blood skills part, and it's just going to give 18% damage to all skills. Doesn't really apply to us in this build, but I don't know if everybody knows. And then 3 to Ties of Blood. Your blood skills deal 15% increased overpower. Corpse Tendrils over to Blighted Corpse Tendrils because it has a chance to drop a blood orb, which we want some blood orbs. This build is focused on some blood orbs. 1 into Serration, and then we have Compound Fracture, Avulsion, and Rapid Ossification. So this build also turns Tidal Wave into a bone skill, so that's super important as well. 5 into Blood Wave up to Supreme Blood Wave. We want this because we need blood orbs. Memento Mori, Finality, and then 2 into Standalone. And then we have Rosma's Vigor, which, after being healthy for 15 seconds, your next blood skill overpowers, and this timer is reduced by 2 seconds each time blood orbs heal or overheal you for an amount greater than or equal to your base life. So we just want to stack blood orb and blood orb healing, so that we can get guaranteed overpowers. And let's go to assigned skills here. In the Book of the Dead, we are sacrificing everything, and then we have Skeletal Warriors, the one that gives you critical strike chance. The Mages is the one that gives you overpower damage, and then the Golem's the one that gives you attack speed. Scrolling down here. Sorry, I was trying to read something to make sure I was 100% right about, yeah, Blood Wave is additionally a bone skill. This is super important. Deathless Visage, which is getting changed with previous Bone Spear leaves behind echoes that explode for physical damage and increased by 5% for every 30% critical strike damage you have. It's actually being super buffed. Bone Spear deals up to 50% more critical strike damage and forms echoes that burst for physical damage, increased by 5% for every 25% of your critical strike damage bonus. This is absolutely huge. So your Bone Spear is just going to do tons of extra critical strike damage. We are stacking a little bit of critical strike damage, but we're also doing a lot of overpower damage. We might do, like, see how this is offensive is critical strike damage. I changed it to like overpower damage on the ring, but it might be better to stack critical strike damage. It's really hard to tell that without being in the game. So, but either it'll be more overpower damage or more critical strike damage to make Deathless Visage buff here. Shroud of False Death, of course, and then Unyielding Commander is actually Bone Duster, which is the new aspect, that Bone Spear is guaranteed to critical strike enemies within Bone Prison and deals 20 to 40% increased damage to them. Then Pants is the new one. This is the thing that pretty much just, like, you need this for it to function. Casting Bone Spear reduces Blood Wave's cooldown by 2 seconds, so we want some good attack speed, max life, and overpower damage, which will help with our overpower, and then 2 to 3 ranks Tides of Blood, which will give us multiplicative overpower damage. So Blood Wave is additionally a bone skill that spawns a bone prison at its endpoint and increases your blood skill damage by up to 80%. So to give 80% damage to Bone Spear, and then also it being a bone skill means that the rapid ossification will, every 100 essence you spend, reduces the cooldowns of your bone skills. We have ranks to rapid ossification too on our ring and amulet, so it'll be like 4.5 seconds or something like that. So we're hoping to keep that up. And since it's a bone skill, Path of Occult, which says ranks to bone skills, will actually give Blood Wave more ranks so that it has a lower cooldown. Let's go back to this. For 8 seconds when cast, Bone Spear is additionally a blood skill that will drain 10% maximum life each cast after hitting an enemy to consume a surrounding corpse and launch a new Bone Spear from it. So that's pretty much just says it will drain 10% max life each cast after hitting an enemy, and then it will consume a corpse, and then that will launch a new Bone Spear from it. Pretty nice. Yeah, and then, of course, we have these ranks to bone skills, Bone Prison cooldown, armor, movement speed. And Bone Prison is just like a larger area, and it fires Bone Splinters, which I don't have any upgrades to the Bone Splinters. That part doesn't really matter to me that much. Yeah, that doesn't really matter. We're so tight on skills on the skill tree that I can't even. Aspect of Grasping Veins, ranks to Evulsion and Tides of Blood, since Tides of Blood is what's giving us all that overpower damage, and then Evulsion just gives bone skills more damage. Bonus to Ossification, attack speed, and blood attack speed. So the blood finesse stuff will apply to Bone Spear now since it's a blood skill. And then Tidal Aspect. So the Blood Wave, the way that we're going to get our blood orbs is at the end of Blood Wave, it will spawn 6, but with Tidal, it should spawn double that because there's multiple waves. The only thing I can find online about whether that is how that worked is one guy said it pretty much on like Reddit or some shit. If it doesn't work that way, then we'll change this, but I'm really hoping it does work that way because it makes life a little bit easier. And then Ring of Starless Skies, of course. Attack speed, intelligence, pick your poison on the 3rd skill. Because the current Bone Spear does vulnerable damage, but we have vulnerable damage because of the Witchcraft powers, so which we haven't gone over yet. Overpower damage, again, might be critical strike damage, and then attack speed, or blood attack speed. Active Ruins wise, we have Ohm and Lock. Lock to give us some damage reduction because we took a lot of damage reduction out to get some more damage, pretty much. Ohm gives us more damage. Oh, I didn't even go over the sword, did I? Aspect of the Great Feast to do 90% increased damage, but we lose 7 essence per second, but the blood, not the blood orbs, but we have lucky hit chance on here to restore resource. There we go. Sorry, English is hard. Words are hard. Lucky hit to restore resource, intelligence, max life, critical strike damage, chance for Bone Spear projectiles to cast twice, and let it be known that if it casts twice, it'll actually do this, because casting Bone Spear reduces Blood Wave's cooldown. So if that procs, then it should go down by 4 seconds, unless we're just getting gypped by Blizzard here. Yeah, and then Occult Gems, Killing Wind and Duststone. Killing Wind is the one that gives you 15% critical strike chance and 25% movement speed. Duststone gives you 4% per hex that an enemy has, which we have 3 hexes. Breath of the Coven is, let me pull it up here. I'm a little bit all over the place today. Dealing damage or applying a CC effect with any of your Witchcraft effects increases your attack speed by X for 10 seconds, stacking once per unique Witchcraft effect. All of your Witchcraft effects are Eldritch, Psych, and Growth. And then at rank 8, gain 40% lucky hit chance while bonuses from all 3 are active at once. And these hexes are 1 from each of them, so that will work as well. Shaken Soul and Wave of Woe. Wave of Woe just applies every time you deal damage to the enemy. It doesn't really matter what it does, but Shaken Soul says that whenever you affect an enemy, pretty much with Wave of Woe, you're going to guaranteed make them vulnerable. Because of this, since all powers are a certain way, then these will do it as well. But I don't know. I like using Wave of Woe because it's guaranteed every time you hit them, it makes them vulnerable. There's no lucky hit chance or like special thing about it. But yeah, let's go to the Mercenaries. We have Rahir down to Inspiration, of course, does the most damage. And then Verena with Bloodthirst gets that 10% attack speed. The hexes, by the way, it doesn't really matter what they do. One applies damage, one makes them deal less damage, and one's like fire damage or something. It just matters to give us the damage from the Occult gem. Then I think that's it here. Let me make sure. Bloodbath. Oh, that's for the board. Of the Great Feast is getting changed, but it's not going to affect this build really. Wrathman's Vigor is giving 120% overpower damage, which that's nice. Here's the changes to Bone Prison. Cooldown reduced from 18 to 15. Previous enemies within Bone Spear. Oh, they were vulnerable. Enemies within Bone Spear, when it appears, are made vulnerable and take 15% more damage, which is nice. And then max cooldown reduction reduced from 3 to 5. And then Supernatural Bone Spear is getting a buff on its own, and then Bone Spear makes the first enemy hit vulnerable for 3 seconds and deals 30% increased overpower damage. So we'll always make the first enemy we hit vulnerable, but because of the combo we got going on here, just like everything that gets hit, period, vulnerable. I think we covered everything here. So then we go over to the Paragon board, which is actually really hard because, I don't know, you can only have 4 of them, essentially. The actual aspect, or the glyphs in the middle weren't that bad, but choosing boards was horrible. So we have Sacrificial in the starter board, getting just enough to get to it, and grabbing all the blue, pretty much, except for the ones up here. Up to, we have Bloodbath here, which this is getting changed to, what was it? We literally just had it up. Bloodbath, right here. Deal 100% increased overpower damage. After overpowering, you deal 25% increased blood skill damage for 5 seconds, which that's nice because Bone Spear is a blood skill, and it's just giving us more overpower damage. Let me see. Does anything else apply? No. So everything should be as red. Not grabbing this blue up here, but we wanted the damage while fortified, the max life, damage while fortified. We don't have this one right here because we just so tight on points. Grabbing all this healing received over here and overpower damage. We want healing received so that we get more heals from the blood orbs, and the blood orbs will trigger the wrath mode to make us overpower. Coming over here to Blood Begets Blood. Blood orb, or this is pretty much reads when you gather 5 blood orbs, you do 50% more damage. What do we got in here? Amplify. Yeah, so that our curse, since we have the 1 curse ability, it'll just do more damage to enemies within. So we have Bone Graft, obviously, with Essence in here. Oh, we had Exploit in here, grabbing all of these. Exploit is actually subject to change, but we'll see. Sorry, my brain, sometimes when I'm making these videos, my brain just starts going and going and going and going with possible changes. But we have Essence in here for critical strike damage, and grabbing pretty much all the blue except for this. This appears more healing received, critical strike chance, which inside of the bone prisons, they will always be critically striked. But if there's a slight chance there isn't a bone prison, we just want this extra to be safe. Grabbing this max life, resistant to all elements. Remember too that having more max life is good for overpowering, so it might actually be good for us to get rid of one of the, what is it, the rune works, and put the one that gives us 20% extra life in there. It's hard to tell if that's going to be the best choice. Like, obviously we'd get more damage when we take lockout, but without locker, how often are we going to die? And we're going to have to change stuff now to help with this. Because as it sits right now, I have weakened the defense of the Necro so far to try to get more damage out of it and more utility out of it. So things might have to get dialed back, but that's something that you'll have to tell from actually playing the game, not from looking at a spreadsheet, pretty much, just what this is, you know? And then frailty, there we go. English is hard. And then we have Dominate in here, grabbing all the willpower nodes, coming up through here, getting this shadow resistance stuff, which you can honestly get rid of, because getting some shadow resistance probably isn't going to matter, but I wanted the max life because of the damage that we talked about, and this over here is resistant to all elements. Some of these resistance to all elements nodes are probably going to go, because once we actually get into the game and there's a chart, if we hit max and then we have a bunch of resistance to all elements, it'll be like, oh, well, we're done, so we'll remove this and this and this, and then we're still at max resistances, that type of thing. But that's hard to tell, so I went on the safe side and just added the resistances for now. One thing that sucked really bad was getting rid of, especially since Bone Spear is going to be consuming corpses. Edit, that's what I wanted. Is we don't have this board, the Flesh Eater. Consuming 5 corpses grants 40% increased damage for 6 seconds. Well, that is you have to collect the 5 corpses, right? And I know that the bone spear is like consuming corpses along with our corpse skills. So it might be the better option, but if I look at it here, cursed enemies take 10% increased damage for each second that they're cursed, so they'll get to 40%. If I go here, obviously hitting enemies with bone skills increases your damage by 1% and your maximum of essence by 2 for 8 seconds, stacks up to 8% increased damage and 16 maximum essence. But we can't get rid of Bone Graft because Bone Graft's the one that has all this like essence on kill max stuff. I mean, now that I'm reading about it and thinking about it, it might be better to get rid of it because this only adds 16% damage. But for now, we're keeping Bone Graft because it adds this essence on kill, which will help us out. This damage reduction here, this critical strike damage, and this bone skill damage. But it might be worth getting rid of it for Flesh Eater. So we'll see. Whenever I get actually in the game, I'll test that out. But for now, this is still going to be good. Flesh Eater just might add another like 20-something% multiplicative damage. And I might not play this during the PTR, but this and the Druid and the Sorcerer actually are all super interesting to me to play when Season 7 itself comes out. Like, I don't even care about playing the Spiritborn that much because nothing's changing necessarily, right? But there seems to be big changes to these other builds. Like, this is huge. Just like Bone skills become Blood skills. It's going to change how Bone Spirit works if they want to use that. But yeah, and what is this? This gives us up to 50%, and this whole build just relying on collecting blood orbs. This right here is giving us tons of overpower damage. In my opinion, by the way, they should just get rid of the starter boards and let us choose 5 boards, right? Like, if they want to restrict us on 5 boards, let us pick the starter board then. But anyway, yeah, this is what we got going for now. I didn't see a different glyph that was better than some of these other ones. That was the one thing that was kind of lacking. I mean, Blood Drinker, your blood orbs are going to fortify you, but we don't really care about the fortify because what is it? This gives us 10% increased damage, and then this gives us 10% increased damage. So, yeah. Getting extra fortified doesn't really matter that much to me. We do have some stuff that gives us fortify already. So, just to point that out, since this cares about while fortified, you deal increased damage to elites. Drain vitality. So since we have Shroud of False Death, we will have 1 point into that. And as long as we have any fortify at all, that damage is going to apply. So we'll always be fortified because it has lucky hit to, and that's each time you hit an enemy. So as the bone spear pierces, right? It actually might be worth doing this. I said up here doesn't matter, but since we do have the boots on, if we take this and put it here, bone spinners have a 25% chance to fire 2 additional projectiles. If you cast with 50 more essence, we'll actually put that there. And that will make the boots that launch them pretty much inside of the bone prison. It'll help with our resource, and it'll help with proccing anything that cares about a lucky hit chance pretty much. And our lucky hit chance is going to be massively increased because witchcraft effects, or sorry, not what is it? Breath of the Coven at rank gain 40% lucky hit chance, and Bone Spear on its own already has a good lucky hit chance, 50%. So like we'll just be proccing anything that cares about lucky hit all the time. Since we care about blood orbs, this right here, but even at 4 points, it's only a 12% chance, and it can only happen every 2 seconds, so it wasn't worth putting points into this when points were already going. Like, yeah, it'll give us a blood orb every so often, but not a whole lot. What we're really banking on is Blood Wave creating blood orbs, and I'm really, really hoping what I read on Reddit is correct, and Tidal will create more blood orbs for us to get so that we can constantly overpower. If it doesn't, and there's a way that I can make the build work, that would actually be pretty good as long as I can make the build work, because then I could add another damaging aspect to the ring. But for now, this is where we're at. Yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all the generic YouTube stuff. I've rambled on this one. This was the hardest one for me to put together because I played Bone Spear in Season 1, and that is the last time I played a Necromancer. And the game has changed drastically since then. And I didn't make my own builds back then. I copied builds back then. But anyway, thank you guys for watching.